The concrete walls of cell block D had seen countless broken souls, but none quite like the man who whispered to shadows. Officer Sarah Chen pressed her ear against the cold metal door, her breath catching as she heard it again. A soft, deliberate conversation with someone who simply wasn't there. For 3 weeks, prisoner 47291 had been talking to empty corners of his cell, his voice barely audible through the reinforced steel. The other guards dismissed it as typical isolation madness, but Sarah knew better. She'd watched the security footage frame by frame, noting how his lips moved in perfect synchronization with responses only he could hear. His eyes tracked movement where none existed, and his posture shifted as if making room for another presence. What chilled her most wasn't his apparent delusion. It was the growing realization that his whispered conversations followed a pattern, a rhythm that seemed almost ritualistic. Tonight, as she stood guard during the graveyard shift, Sarah was about to discover that some prisoners aren't confined by bars at all. The prisoner's name was Marcus Vale, though the files revealed precious little about his past. Convicted of a crime so heinous that even seasoned corrections officers spoke of it in hushed tones, he'd been sentenced to life in solitary confinement. Sarah had read his psychological evaluations, a brilliant mind fractured by guilt and isolation, prone to elaborate fantasies and dissociative episodes. Yet something about Marcus felt different from the usual broken inmates she'd encountered. His cell was meticulously organized despite containing only a bed, sink, and toilet. Every item had its place, every surface clean and purposeful. But it was the way he positioned himself during his whispered conversations that unsettled her. Marcus would sit cross-legged in the center of his cell, leaving a precise empty space beside him, as if someone invisible occupied that exact spot. His head would turn at regular intervals, listening to responses that never came through the surveillance audio. Sarah found herself returning to monitor him long after her shifts ended, drawn by a mystery she couldn't quite articulate. The breakthrough came during a routine cell inspection. As Sarah searched Marcus's belongings, she discovered something that made her blood run cold. Dozens of letters written in 2 distinctly different handwritings. The first was Marcus's familiar scrawl, but the second was elegant, flowing script that seemed to respond to his written words with intimate knowledge of his thoughts and fears. "You found them," Marcus said calmly, watching her examine the correspondence. His voice carried no surprise, only resignation. "She's been writing back for months now. At first I thought I was losing my mind, but then I realized she was never really gone." Sarah's hands trembled as she read the letters. They formed a dialogue between Marcus and Elena, discussing memories of a life together, promises of reunion, and increasingly disturbing plans for escape. The handwriting analysis would later confirm what Sarah already suspected. Both sets of letters were written by the same person, yet the psychological profiles embedded in each voice were distinctly distinct. Marcus smiled sadly. "You can't arrest a ghost, Officer Chen." The prison's psychological evaluations revealed Marcus's tragic history. 5 years ago, he'd been driving with his wife Elena when their car skidded off a rain-slicked mountain road. Marcus survived with minor injuries, but Elena died instantly from the impact. The crime that had landed him in prison wasn't murder. It was his desperate attempt to bring her back through increasingly dangerous occult rituals that had terrorized his small town.
Dr. Rebecca Torres, the prison psychiatrist, explained to Sarah that Marcus had developed what she called adaptive dissociation. His mind had created a version of Elena so vivid and consistent that he genuinely believed she existed independently of his consciousness. The whispered conversations weren't delusions. They were his subconscious processing grief through an elaborate internal dialogue. But as Sarah delved deeper into Marcus's case files, she discovered troubling inconsistencies. Security footage showed objects in his cell moving when he wasn't near them. Temperature readings dropped significantly during his conversations. Most disturbing of all, other inmates in nearby cells had begun reporting dreams about a woman that matched Elena's description perfectly. Sarah's investigation took on an obsessive quality. She began staying late, reviewing hours of surveillance footage, searching for rational explanations for the unexplainable phenomena surrounding Marcus. The more she learned, the more she questioned her own sanity. Cold spots appeared on thermal imaging exactly where Marcus claimed Elena was sitting. Electronic equipment malfunctioned in his presence. Even the hardened guards began avoiding his cell block, claiming they felt watched by invisible eyes. The turning point came when Sarah discovered Marcus's original arrest report. The investigating officer had noted something peculiar about the crash scene. Elena's body had never been found. The car had been thoroughly searched, the surrounding area combed by rescue teams, but no trace of her wife's remains had ever been recovered. The official report concluded that her body had likely been swept away by the river below, but Marcus had always insisted she'd survived and was calling to him. Sarah felt a chill as she realized she'd been approaching this case from entirely the wrong angle. That night, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She entered Marcus's cell during the late shift, when the other guards were occupied with their rounds. Marcus looked up from his usual position, unsurprised by her presence. "She's been waiting for you," he said simply. "Elena knew you'd eventually come." Sarah felt the temperature drop as she stepped further into the cell. "There's no Elena, Marcus. She died in the accident. What you're experiencing is a trauma response, a way your mind is processing grief." Marcus's expression shifted, becoming distant and eerily calm. When he spoke again, his voice carried a subtle accent that Sarah had never heard before. Soft, melodic, unmistakably feminine. "Tell me, Officer Chen, what makes you so certain that death is the end of existence? Have you considered that perhaps consciousness isn't confined to flesh and bone?" Sarah's breath caught. She was no longer speaking to Marcus Vale. Somehow, impossibly, Elena had found a way to communicate through him.
The conversation that followed challenged everything Sarah believed about reality. Speaking through Marcus, Elena revealed that she had indeed died in the accident, but her consciousness had become tethered to her husband's overwhelming grief and guilt. She described the crash from her perspective, the moment of impact, the sensation of separation from her physical form, and the discovery that love could transcend death itself. "Marcus blames himself," Elena explained, her voice emerging from his lips with heartbreaking clarity. "He believes he could have prevented the accident, saved me somehow. His guilt created a bridge between our worlds, allowing me to remain close to him. But this existence is torture for both of us." Sarah struggled to process what she was hearing. Everything in her rational mind screamed that this was impossible, yet the intimate details Elena shared about her life with Marcus, information that had never been documented in any file, suggested something beyond mere psychological projection. Elena's next words sent chills through Sarah's entire being. "I need your help to set us both free."
Elena's plan was as simple as it was terrifying. She needed Sarah to help Marcus confront the truth about the accident, not just Elena's death, but his own role in creating their current supernatural prison. The guilt and grief that had allowed Elena to remain earthbound were also preventing them both from moving forward. "Show him the accident report," Elena pleaded through Marcus's voice. "Make him understand that the crash wasn't his fault. I swerved to avoid a deer. He couldn't have prevented it. His self-blame is keeping me trapped between worlds, and it's slowly destroying what's left of his sanity." Sarah struggled to process what she was hearing. Everything in her rational mind screamed that this was impossible. Yet, the intimate details Elena shared about her life with Marcus, information that had never been documented in any file, suggested something beyond mere psychological projection. As if reading her thoughts, Elena added, "Look at your hands, Sarah. Do you see how they're shaking? That's not fear. That's the resonance of truth." The next morning, Sarah brought Marcus the complete accident reconstruction report. As he read about the deer in the roadway, the unavoidable skid, and the expert conclusion that no driver could have prevented the crash, Sarah watched a profound change occur in his demeanor. Marcus's face contorted with years of suppressed emotion. I always thought if I had been more careful, if I had been driving slower." His voice broke as the weight of misplaced guilt began to lift. In that moment, Sarah felt the temperature in the cell shift. A warmth seemed to fill the space, and for just an instant, she could have sworn she saw a translucent figure standing beside Marcus. A woman with kind eyes and an expression of infinite compassion. "Thank you," came Elena's voice, now seeming to originate from the empty air itself rather than through Marcus. "You've given us both the greatest gift possible, the truth." Marcus looked up, his eyes clear for the first time since Sarah had known him. "She's free now. We both are." In the days that followed, the strange phenomena surrounding Marcus's cell gradually ceased. The cold spots disappeared, the electronic malfunctions stopped, and the other inmates reported normal dreams once again. Marcus himself seemed transformed, still grieving but no longer tormented by the crushing weight of false guilt. During their final conversation, Marcus shared something that would stay with Sarah forever. "Elena was never really gone," he said quietly. "Love like ours doesn't simply end with death, but she couldn't move on while I was drowning in guilt, and I couldn't heal while she was trapped by my pain. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone go." I realized I'd witnessed something far more profound than a psychological thriller or supernatural mystery. I'd seen the power of love to transcend death and the equally powerful necessity of letting go. The whispering prisoner in the dark found peace not through escape, but through acceptance. Marcus was transferred to the general population the following week, where he began volunteering as a grief counselor for other inmates. The story of Marcus and Elena continues to haunt Sarah's thoughts, raising questions that extend far beyond the confines of a prison cell. Was Elena's presence real, or was Sarah witnessing the most elaborate psychological projection she'd ever encountered? The evidence suggests something that challenges our understanding of consciousness, love, and the boundaries between life and death. What's your theory? Do you believe love can transcend death, or was this an intricate manifestation of grief-induced psychological complexity? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious about your perspective on this mind-bending story. If this psychological thriller left you questioning the nature of reality itself, hit that like button and subscribe for more twisted stories that blur the line between the possible and the impossible. We dive deep into the darkest corners of human psychology every week, exploring tales that will leave you wondering what's real and what's merely the product of our complex, mysterious minds. There are more stories like this waiting to unravel your assumptions about reality. Until next time, stay kind, stay sharp, and stay curious.